The lake is still tonight. Not perfectly still, just enough movement across the surface to remind you that things can be moving even when they appear quiet. There is something about that which feels familiar lately. The feeling that life has become difficult to measure. The feeling that everyone else seems to know where they are going, while you keep checking the horizon for a sign that you're on the right path. The feeling that maybe there was a moment when everything was supposed to come together, and somehow you missed it. Maybe it shows up differently depending on the day. Sometimes it sounds like impatience. Sometimes it sounds like disappointment. Sometimes it arrives as a simple thought that passes through almost unnoticed. I thought I'd be further along by now. And the strange thing about that thought is how quickly it can feel true. Not because anyone proved it, not because there is evidence, just because it has been repeated enough times to feel familiar. You look at your life. You look at the things that still haven't happened. You look at the questions that remain unanswered. And without meaning to, you start measuring the entire journey through the few pieces that have not arrived yet. Then another thought appears. Maybe everyone else figured something out that I didn't. And maybe that thought stays around longer than it should. Maybe it quietly reshapes how you see yourself. Maybe it changes how you see time. Because after a while, the question is no longer about the dream itself. The question becomes whether there is still enough time for the dream. The lake barely moves. Wait, reflect, to remain. The rhythm is easy to miss. Nothing dramatic is happening. Nothing is announcing itself. The surface changes a little, then a little more, and somehow the entire lake becomes different without ever appearing rushed. There is something curious about the way people think about timing. We tend to imagine it as a straight line, a schedule, a sequence, a collection of milestones that should happen in a particular order. And when life refuses to follow that order, something inside begins keeping score. Years pass, comparisons accumulate, pressure quietly builds. The body often notices before the mind does. The shoulders carry a little more. The chest stays slightly guarded. The breath becomes something that gets watched rather than trusted. Because when a person feels behind, the nervous system starts behaving as though it needs to catch up. Wait, reflect, to remain. The rhythm returns, different now, less about the lake, more about the feeling of standing in front of a life that has not revealed all of itself yet. And maybe that is where another question begins. What if feeling behind and actually being behind are not the same thing? The thought arrives quietly, then lingers. Because most people never ask that question. They simply assume the feeling is proof. If it feels late, it must be late. If it feels delayed, it must be delayed. If it feels unfinished, something must have gone wrong. Yet life rarely provides that kind of certainty. A ripple moves across the water, small enough that it almost goes unnoticed. Attention follows it anyway. Then something unexpected happens. The ripple disappears. The lake remains. And for a moment, that feels important. Because maybe not everything that disturbs your sense of timing deserves the authority you've been giving it. Maybe some thoughts arrive, create movement, then leave. While something deeper remains underneath them. The jaw eases slightly, not because anything has been solved, because something feels less urgent than it did a few moments ago. The breath moves easier, less supervised, less responsible for carrying the future. More weight is being held now. The ground feels steady beneath what has been trying so hard to stay ahead. Another question appears. If your life truly had missed its moment, would you still care this much? It is an odd question, but it stays. Because the desire is still here, the longing is still here, the hope is still here. Perhaps tired, perhaps guarded, perhaps quieter than before, but still present. And maybe that matters more than it first appears. Because people rarely continue longing for things that feel completely finished. The lake continues holding the sky. Wait, reflect, remain. The rhythm changes again. This time it feels less like waiting, more like staying. Staying with the uncertainty long enough to notice that something else exists beside it. Maybe the fear is not really about time. Maybe the fear is about closure. The fear that the story has already been decided. The fear that opportunities have become unavailable. The fear that becoming has somehow ended. Yet nothing about life seems to support that conclusion. People change unexpectedly. Directions shift unexpectedly. Meaning appears unexpectedly. Entire chapters begin long after they were supposed to. The chest feels more spacious now. The body reaches less far ahead. The nervous system no longer seems as interested in chasing proof. And perhaps that is because another possibility is beginning to appear. Not certainty, not reassurance, something quieter. What if life is not operating on the timeline you created years ago? What if the version of yourself who created that timeline could not see everything that would happen between then and now? What if the delays shaped something important? What if the waiting changed something essential? What if the path was doing more than simply moving forward? The questions remain open. But they land differently than the old ones. The old questions made the future feel smaller. These questions make it feel larger. A little more room appears, a little less pressure, a little less need to force an answer tonight. The lake remains. The ripple is gone. The sky continues changing overhead. And somewhere in that quiet movement, the fear begins losing some of its certainty. Maybe your life is not late. Maybe it is simply incomplete. Maybe there are things still gathering beyond what can currently be seen. Conversations, opportunities, versions of yourself, entire chapters. Not because they were delayed, not because they were withheld, because they are still becoming. Wait, reflect, remain. The rhythm returns one final time, not asking for trust, not demanding belief, simply existing. The lake has not finished reflecting the night. The story has not finished unfolding. The future has not finished arriving. And perhaps the same is true for you. The questions are still moving. The possibilities are still moving. Life itself is still moving. Something remains unfinished, not in a broken way, in a living way. And somewhere beyond what can currently be measured, something is still finding its way toward you. Not late, not lost, not missed. Still arriving,